All right, I think we're going live now to our correspondent who is live to us. The strikes which hit the city of Zap-Ar-Ruja come just a day after explosions rocked the only bridge connecting Russia to occupied Crimea, a strike which is being widely viewed as a strategic and symbolic blow to Moscow. For more on this now, we cross to the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, where SABC News correspondent Trent Murray is this morning. Trent, a very good morning to you. Thanks indeed for your time. So, speaking to you yesterday, there'd been no claim of responsibility for this blast. Has anything changed on the ground? We're now hearing that a number of people have died. What is the latest on the ground?
Yeah, good morning, Chris. That's right. Quite distressing news coming out of Zap-Ar-Ruja this morning. It is Ukraine's sixth biggest city, and according to authorities here, around 2 a.m. local time, a barrage of missiles hit residential towers. People, of course, were sleeping in the middle of the night inside their homes when those missiles hit. Now, President Zelensky's office and the Ministry of Defence says a number of people have been killed. We understand the death toll currently stands at 17, according to the Ministry for Defence. 49 people are in hospital. 6 of them are children. A major rescue operation now underway to try and find if there are any more people in the rubble. As you said, it comes 24 hours after that major blast on the bridge. We did expect Russia would try to retaliate, and it seems they have done that by striking this residential area. President Zelensky calling that attack this morning merciless and evil.
And of course, Trent, the timing of this, of course, noteworthy given what we saw happen on that key bridge yesterday. Can you tell us what the reaction has been to those blasts? And, what is the situation in Kiev where you are? Is it business as usual? Is there a sense of panic?
Well, certainly here in the Ukrainian capital, it's been away from the frontline fighting now for several months. So life kind of goes on here as normal. But what I can tell you is yesterday, when that news of the bridge exploding broke, you could walk around cafes or bars here and everyone was watching it on their mobile phone, sharing memes, videos, photos with their friends. It was a really big moment for the Ukrainians because they have long loathed that bridge, because for them it was a 17-kilometre symbol of Russia's annexation of their territory. So to see it go up in flames, of course, was probably a real morale boost for a lot of Ukrainians. Conversely, for the Russians, it is a huge humiliation given the amount of money that was spent on it. President Putin, it really was a personal passion project, I think it can be said for him. So the Russians have been very keen to try and get that bridge repaired overnight. They've sent videos out showing road traffic going over one of the lanes that wasn't destroyed. Also trying to get the railway connection built again very quickly. But we have also seen overnight there is clear anger in Russia about this. State media, several broadcasters discussing many aspects of this overnight. We heard one senior broadcaster talk about the need to cancel Christmas and New Year celebrations and instead send the money to the army. We also heard from the Deputy Speaker of the Russian Parliament. He said it was time for Russia to destroy all of Ukraine's infrastructure to, quote, drive it back to the 18th century.
Does the attack, Trent, on this bridge raise the prospects of a further escalation or even the risk of nuclear weapons? We spoke about this very briefly yesterday and the sentiments that were shared by US President Joe Biden. But does this raise the prospect of an escalation of what we've seen?
Well, look, I think there is a real understanding that Russia now is very much on the back foot when it comes to their military capabilities on the ground. I mean, Ukraine has really put its foot on the gas, if you will, in recent weeks and months, and is launching some very successful counter-offensives, especially around Kherson, which is in the south of Ukraine. Now, that area was being very much resupplied by that bridge, armour, weapons, military fuel and the like, all being used to get to the troops. With that supply line now disrupted, it's going to make it even more difficult for the Russians to hold that territory. And as I say, probably put the wind in the sails of the Ukrainians having a bit of a morale boost. That, of course, does then raise major questions about, well, if Moscow's really backed into a corner here, it can see the losses on the battlefield. Does it resort to some sort of nuclear weapon, a strategic one or tactile one, as they sometimes call it, to try and slow the Ukrainians down? What I can tell you is that when you discuss that prospect here with people close to the military or people that just live here, they say, look, even if that was to happen, it wouldn't achieve the outcome that Moscow would probably intend, because we would still keep fighting. So if the idea was to try and slow us down, it wouldn't work. There's a lot of thought here that it is just a lot of saber rattling to try and scare Europe and America into stopping support for Ukraine. For Kiev, that is an unthinkable prospect. They, of course, say they need continued support in order to fight back Russia.
Yeah. Finally, Trent, an update on that nuclear power plant in Zap-Ar-Ruja. We know it's found itself in the middle of heavy fighting.
Yeah, and which is exactly where you don't want a nuclear power plant to be, isn't it? In the middle of a war, particularly on the front line. The UN is raising the alarm over this, saying in the past 48 hours they have confirmed by their independent experts that shelling hit the nuclear power plant, and it actually took out the main power lines connecting the power plant to its external electricity supplier. Now, the reason this is so important is because a nuclear power plant requires electricity in order to cool its reactors. Now, when reactors aren't cooled, then you get a nuclear meltdown, and we all know from history what happens then. You just need to look at Chernobyl or Fukushima. Now, we understand that the emergency generators kicked in immediately when that electricity was disconnected. They have got about 10 days worth of diesel fuel to operate in them, we understand. It is for that reason the UN Atomic Energy Agency is desperately calling for the situation to be de-escalated and for power to be reconnected so that the stability of the plant can be restored. They do know, of course, that if there was any sort of radioactive incident there, well, the ramifications of that would ripple well beyond just Ukraine and right across the region.
Certainly of great concern. Thank you very much indeed. Trent Murray, live to us from Kiev in Ukraine on the latest developments there. Thanks indeed for your time. We take a short break here on the programme. More news when we get back.